Hello, welcome to episode 263 of the Craft House Magic podcast. My name's Ellie and I'm coming to you from Norwich in Norfolk in the UK, and today is the 11th of January. So welcome everybody. I'm here to share with you all the things that I've been up to in the last 7 days in crafting wise. This week's episode I'm actually going to go through the list of targets I had for 2023. I basically had 2.5 make 9 lists to do with knitting and crochet, which I did some of, and actually Adam's mum knitted a lot of these things, so at least I had the targets and Liz has knitted a lot of it for me. I did have a sewing list as well, but today I'm just going to talk about the knitting and the crochet bits, but then I'm going to do a confession section. Oh dear. I've got a little bit on what's occurring and then a little bit of information on my shop update at the end of the podcast. So I had 3 lists, one for just general stuff, which included stuff for me, one list of 9 things I wanted to make for Jensen, and then I had a separate list of a few crochet things that I wanted to make as well. So first of all, the general list starts. Number 1 was the winter walk hat. Now I finished this earlier last year, quite early on, which I'm pleased about. This was a present from my mum, so I haven't got it anymore, but I should have a picture of it that I can pop up here. So it's a DK weight hat, and I knitted it in my own hand-dyed yarn in a stellina DK, merino nylon and stellina, so it had a little bit of sparkle. I knitted that up for mum, and I also popped a pom-pom on the top to make it look fancy. I think they're quite in at the moment, and mum fancied having a pom-pom, so that's what she had. I did notice with the pattern, there's like a cabled pattern, but it's only on the front of the hat, so it isn't on the back, so it sort of gives you a rest from knitting it. But I think I would have liked the look of it being cabled all the way around, but it still come out really nice, and I popped one of my faux leather tags on it, which mum really likes as well. So the second thing on my list was the Beret, and that is a pattern by Woolly Wormhead, and it's like a beret, obviously, because it's the Beret, and I knitted this in my As the World Falls Down colourway, and this was inspired by the song from the movie The Labyrinth in one of my music from the movies sets. This was from not last year but the year before. I've actually done another music from the movies yarn club this year, and it's specifically focusing on fantasy films like Labyrinth, but obviously this is one that I've done on a previous club, so it won't be exactly the same as this. So it's got some nice lacy detail around the outside, and then I do like this star centre. The instructions said to do either the rib or a rolled cuff, but the picture itself of the design had a bit of both in it, so Liz knitted it and I actually got her to do a little bit of both, like the picture, the finished picture. It did come out quite big, but I think for a slouchy beret that comes out really nice, so there we go. Hopefully I can give you a bit of a twirl and show you what that looks like. But I am pleased with how that's come out actually, and it's something I've worn quite a few times actually, so it's nice to have it so that it's slouchy, because I think it's a little bit more flattering on my head. I'm not sure if that happens with other people, whether it's just to do with my head. But there we go, that is the Beret by Woolly Wormhead. So that was number 2. Finished. And then the Songbird mittens were number 3. Now, I haven't actually finished the Songbird mittens, but I do have one finished, and then the other mitten is sort of half finished, but I'll just show you the finished one so that you can see what it looks like. I knitted it in some Jameson & Smith in a grey and a, well, like a purpley grey and a pink, but I really like this pattern, so I knitted it in the 2.5mm rather than I think the 2.75 that the pattern called for, and like I said on last week's podcast, the reason why I've done that is because I've knitted quite a lot of Heusser's patterns for mittens, and I do like, for about that stitch count, I like 2.5mm needles, so that's what I went with. I think most of her patterns actually say 2.25, but 2.5 is what I need for my gauge, but that's loads of fun. The next thing on my list was the Expecto Patronum mittens, but I didn't even start them. I did buy the yarn for them, so no doubt this will be on 2024 Make 9 list. So the Expecto Patronum mittens by Dianna, Walla, and it's actually from the Harry Potter knitting book that I actually got a couple of years ago. I think it was a couple of years ago, from my friend Kelly. So I'm going to knit those at some point. But haven't started them yet. I'm finding that doing colour work, I can't knit colour work in front of Jensen at all. He just finds it so exciting. He can't bear for me to knit in the same room as him. So I have to do it in the evening, so I don't get as much knitting time on colour work as I do the rest of my knitting. So I'm going to have to make sure that I'm really try and do at least half an hour on a colour work project every evening, so that I do chip away at it, because I can't knit in front of Jensen when I'm doing colour work. The next thing on my list is the Comfort Fade cardi by Andrea Mowry, and I am currently knitting this. I've done the body and I've nearly done one sleeve, but I'm not going to show you it today because I showed you last week how I was getting on, and I thought I'll leave it till next week to show you some decent amount of progress on it. So I think last week I showed you that I knitted sort of halfway down the body, but I have done quite a bit. But I'm going to wait to show you how the full fade works till next week. But I am loving knitting that, and I have actually picked, so it says to have several inches of positive ease, but I have done no ease at all, because I don't like cardigans being too baggy, especially up here, because I've got quite big hips and bust, and I find that if I have things too big around the top, it makes me feel really horrible. So I've knitted it with no ease so that it's quite slim fitting, so I shall show you my progress on that next week. So the next thing on my list was the Magnolia Bloom jumper, and this is by Camila Vad, and I am wearing said jumper. This is a gorgeous jumper. Now, she does have several versions of this design in different weights of yarn. This is like the chunky version though, and she tells you to use 2 strands of fingering weight yarn and 2 strands of fluff. So this is what Adam's mum Liz knitted it for me. This is what Liz did, and she said it was a bit of a nightmare holding all those yarns, especially with the fluffy yarn, because it tends to grab onto things. Probably advise people to actually use a chunky yarn rather than the 4 strands, because it is a little bit annoying to have to manage your yarn. But this is the chunky version, and she does do sort of lighter weight versions of the Magnolia Bloom. I think it's called Magnolia Bloom Light for the fingering weight one. So if you go and have a look at her Ravelry page, you can see all the different versions of this pattern in different jumpers and cardigans that she's done. I know that there's one with this pattern around the bottom in a cardigan version, which is quite nice as well. But I just loved the way the bobbles looked in this weight yarn, so I thought I'd go for this one. Even though I haven't previously worn a lot of chunky jumpers. In fact, I've never knitted a chunky jumper in my life before. So having one like this, actually, I've learned that I can actually wear really big thick jumpers. I am starting to feel the cold more, I think. So there we are. This is the Magnolia Bloom by Camila Vad, and I think it's come out really nice. I have got a stripy t-shirt under this, but so that's not ideal to have something stripy underneath it. It's probably nice to have a bright colour underneath so that it shows up under the lace, but you can see how it's come out. It's quite a shortish jumper if you follow the instructions. It's not a very long one, but you could of course knit it a bit longer if you wanted to, but I think that works well this length with jeans. So the colourway I knitted this in is my Rain colourway, and I used, well, Liz used 2 strands of non-superwash Highland wool and 2 strands of my alpaca lace weight yarn, which has got silk I think in it as well. But it's made it nice and fluffy, and actually I'm quite surprised how I don't find it very itchy, but I don't think I'm the most sensitive person in the world. I think some people find the fluffy alpaca version of like mohair to be a little bit itchy, but I'm okay with it. I've got 2 things on my list next that I did not get to. So the Campside Cosy by Alicia Plummer and the Hortensia wrap by Amy Lowden. Now these 2 are really beautiful. I just didn't get round to them. I especially think actually the Campside Cosy cardigan would be something I would wear quite a lot, so I think I must get to that. I'm still a little bit, I love the look of the Hortensia wrap, but I don't know whether I'd wear it as often. Although I think if I did non-puffy sleeves with the rest of the shape to be as designed, as per design, I think I'd wear it a bit more. So I might still have a go at that. I will talk about my targets for 2024 on next week's podcast, because otherwise this podcast is going to be horrendously long. So those two cardigans I didn't get round to. But I did get the Arya shawl completed. This is a 2-colour shawl, and actually the version that I've got is a DK version, the Arya shawl. And in fact this is such a wearable shape, I'm very, very tempted to knit this again. So this is the DK version, but there is a fingering weight version that you actually get if you purchase this one as well. So you get both versions if you purchase the one. They're in separate files, but this is the DK version. And I knitted this in 2 yarns that I bought from East Anglia Yarn Festival. This teal one was from Lay Family Yarn. I can't remember what the colourway names, I'm afraid. But this pink one here, this lovely bright pink, was from the Little Grey Girl. So I thought those two colours would go together really nicely. I actually picked them alongside each other as I was going around the show, because that's what, well, I was going for this sort of colour combination, but I found these two that went together really nicely. So it's quite a narrow, long shawl with some beautiful colour changes, which I just absolutely love. And I'm very tempted to knit one of these in fingering weight yarn as well, because it's just so lovely. And it's quite a simple knit, I think, really. Just some very simple lace and some colour blending. So I definitely recommend this pattern. And I will actually get round to the 4-ply weight one at some point. So there we go, that is the 9th one on my Make 9. So how many did I actually get round to finishing? So I did 1, 2, 3, 4 completely finished and 2 still on the needles, but those 2 are pretty much done, so I'm going to say 6. Cheating a bit. I'm sure I'll get those other 2 done by the end of this month. So the next list I've got is for baby knits. Now Adam's mum knitted most of these, so I must give the credit to Liz for doing all of these lovely hand knits for my son Jensen. But I made a list at the beginning of last year and she knitted pretty much every single one. So the first one on my list was the spiral beanie, and this is by Babi Crisoto, I think, and it is this beanie here. So you could do this in rainbow colours if you want to, but I stuck to 4 different colours and I knitted, well, Liz knitted most of it in Aran weight yarn. Liz knitted the spiral bit and I actually did the ribbon at the outside because she didn't really like picking up stitches, so I didn't mind doing that at all. So you knit a panel and then you cinch in the top, and then the bottom you pick up stitches and do your rib. I do think it's a brilliant design of pattern because this actually stretches a lot because of the design of the spiral. What I would say is that if you are running the yarn around the side of the panel as you're knitting it, make sure you leave it quite loose so that you've got a little bit more stretch, and then you'll get more wear out of it. It'll go quite, you know, quite a lot bigger. And I added a pom-pom as well because yeah, you just have to with a spiral beanie like this, I think. So this fits Jensen really nicely now. Actually, when he first had it, it fitted him really nicely, but it's stretched so much, so it's stretching with him and you can get quite a lot of wear out of that. So I definitely recommend this pattern. This is called the Spiral Beanie by Babi Crisoto, and I knitted it in some of my own hand-dyed yarn in a few of the colourways from my Fade to Grey mini set actually, but these are actually dyed on an Aran weight yarn with neps in, which I don't stock in my shop because I didn't like the way the neps kept falling out of it as I was knitting it. So the Spiral Beanie is a free pattern, but I'm afraid I can't remember what size that we knitted in this one, but obviously it's quite stretchy, so you've got quite a forgiving choice in pattern size. I did actually knit myself some mittens that go with this beanie for Jensen, so they use the same colours, and these were a Susan B. Anderson mitten pattern, which I will link in the description bar down below, but I can't remember exactly what the mitten pattern was called. And I added some I-cord to put it around the sleeves of his coat, and I knitted them quite long, so actually he's been wearing these. Well, I knitted them too big for him and then he's been growing into them, so they actually fit now, but I don't think he's going to last very much longer into these. But I knitted these in the opposite colours, which I thought was fun. But he does actually put them on when he's cold. He won't put them on when he's not cold though, to show you. So number 2 on my list was the baby bear bonnet, and this has been worn an awful lot. So it's got 2 little cute little ears on the front. It's got a moss stitch border around the front where your face, the little baby's face goes, and then there's some sort of shaping lines on the back, I-cord around the bottom, and then I-cord to tie around the neck. And he wears this loads, partly because we can get it and it keeps his neck nice and warm right around the front of his face. The original pattern says to use a fingering weight yarn and like a mohair held together, but I didn't want to risk putting mohair in case it was itching him, because he couldn't necessarily tell me that he didn't like the itchy feel. So I did it in 2 strands of fingering weight yarn, which probably made it a little bit thicker, but it does come out the same gauge as the pattern suggests. But it's also because I had a skein of sandy in fingering weight that was ready to knit, so I just decided I'd use that rather than using like a DK yarn, but you could use a DK on its own as well. The baby bear bonnet, we did the 1 to 2 years, and Jensen is now 2 and it still fits him. Because I was hitting gauge and Jensen's got quite a large head, I should imagine that that should last most babies quite a long time. It still fits him now, and he has got a large head compared to a lot of babies. So I think even though the pattern only goes up to 2 years, you've got a little bit more leeway there. So the next pattern that I had on my list was the baby vertebrae by Camila Vad, and I've got 2 versions of this. Ta-da! Both of which knitted by Liz. So these vertebrae cardigans don't go round the front very much. They just sort of sit just past the arm, so that you haven't got a lot of material at the front. They're ideal just to stick on when it's a little bit cool, sort of like springtime, or in the evenings in the summer, or maybe early autumn. But I've got 2 versions of this. This one, it is quite a thick fingering weight yarn, so it was sort of sport weight it was coming up. So even though this pattern as well goes up to 2 years old, it's a paid for pattern, this version, but the newborn vertebrae is free. But I did find actually the newborn vertebrae did last quite a time before he actually stopped wearing it, way past the newborn. I think he at least had it to 6 months. So these ones, I think it was the 1 to 2 years, but this one's knitted in a BFL, which is quite a thick BFL, so that come out slightly bigger I think, and this one's knitted in a DK. And there are instructions in the pattern to use fingering weight, DK, Aran or worsted weight yarn, so there are some good instructions, but I think I got Adam's mum to knit this in the 1 to 2 years, but for the fingering weight yarn, so that it would come up slightly bigger with the numbers. And he's still wearing these now, although it has been a bit cold. He can get in this, you know, it's still plenty big enough. So these are definitely a good type of cardigan to have a go at. I do believe they do like an older child's version as well, but this particular version, it's a paid for pattern when it's past newborn to 2 years, and then they do like a 2 to, I think it might be 2 to 8 years or something like that, and that's by Camila Vad. But like I said, the newborn one is free, so if you have any friends that you know that are having a baby, it's an ideal gift to knit. So the next one on my list is the 11s cardigan by Lisa Shemry, and we have this gorgeous grey cardigan. Now this is in the rain colourway as well, the same as what I've got on here, but this one is in a superwash merino, so you can see that there's more different tones in the yarn, because a non-superwash sort of takes up the dye more evenly, like even if you try and do it uneven. So this is how it looks in a merino and nylon superwash yarn in the rain colourway, and I absolutely love this cardigan. So obviously 11s is as a reference to Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, and it's got this gorgeous pockets on with this texture detail and the same sort of texture on the elbows as well, and Jensen just looks adorable in it. This is knitted in a 1 to 2 years size, and it has actually come up quite big, so he's got plenty of room to grow in it still. But it's something that he's been wearing a lot. This is an Aran weight jumper or cardigan, so I definitely knit this again, just because it's such a lovely shape. and very, very cute on Jensen. Like this little collar. I have just washed this and I just lay it to dry flat on the aero, and I left the collar up, so it's tending to pop up now because I've only just took it off the aero. I have been hand washing all these things or sticking it in a very delicate wash in the washing machine and putting them out to dry flat on the heated area that we've got. So the next pattern I've got is the Wonder by Tin Can Knits, and oh, I love this as well. Do you know, some of these things that well, Adam's mum has been knitting for Jensen are just absolutely beautiful. So this is the Wonder jumper by Tin Can Knits, and this pattern goes right up to large adult sizes. So I'm thinking I need one of these, so that's going to be on my list, I think, for next year. But it's got some simple cable details on the front, some garter, and then on the actual back it's just a plain stocking stitch pattern. Normal long length sleeves, a 1x1 rib around the neck and on the cuff and on the bottom, and just a really nice, it's sort of boat neck, I think. But this has got plenty of room to go over Jensen's head, and it's something that we've reached for quite a lot. This is the 1 to 2 years size, and he's wearing it a lot now, even though it does actually seems like it's still quite big on him. So plenty of growth in there, and it's knitted in my Safety Dance colourway. It's like blues and greens, sort of muted blues and greens, a bit like a grey blue really. And I need to put that on my Make 9 list to do an adult version, because how lovely would that be? Might not be exactly matching, but I just love that pattern. So the next one I've got to show you is the Little Camaro. Oh, another gorgeous one. This is, oh, it's so one of my favourites. I do find actually that the arms are quite slim on this, so I know that Jensen's arms fit in it okay, but there hasn't got loads of room. But obviously they get chubby and slim up as they grow, but it's fine at the moment. But if his arms got any chubbier, then they might not go through the sleeves very well. But they're still quite long, and the body on this is quite long as well. But I love this. This pattern also comes in an adult size, but you don't get it all in with this when you purchase the younger sizes. But isn't it gorgeous? I love it. And these are my favourite colours as well. I'm knitting my cardigan that I'm currently working on the Comfort Fade cardi in some of these colours as well. But I did include Rain colourway with this as well. That's the same as the this cardigan, so I used the same colour. I'm very obsessed with the Rain colourway just because it's the perfect grey, I think, for me. But there we go. That is this one. This one has got an attachment at the back, a little buttonhole, so that you've got plenty of room to get it over your head. And I do get quite a lot of compliments when he's wearing this, saying, oh, that's a nice jumper. So that's always good, isn't it? So the next thing on the list is the Rocky trousers, and another one by Tin Can Knits, and these are they. Very, very cute. So these are knitted in fingering weight yarn. It's got a doubled over cuff around the waist, and this was knitted in a set of 2 yarns that were 50 grams each. We did find that we ran out of the main colour just before, like 3/4 of an inch before the rib needed to start, partly because actually we decided to do an extra inch on the body, because at the time Jensen was wearing reusable nappies a lot, but he hasn't been wearing them so much anymore, but that does give him a little bit of extra wear time. But you can see that I just did a little bit more of the contrast down the leg to make it to the right length, and they're fitting really well now. They're knitted in the 1 to 2 years size. It does look, when he's not wearing a reusable nappy, it does look a little bit big around the waist, but that'll give him a little bit more wear out of it, I think. But it's nice to have these. You could even wear them underneath something. So the next pattern is the Rye Light socks, another Tin Can Knits pattern. Now these came up rather large. I got Liz to knit the 1 to 2 years size in 2.75mm needles, which is what it said on the pattern, but they did come up quite big, so I tend to put them, actually, if he's got socks on already, stick them over the top and they still come up quite big. But sometimes it's nice to have an extra layer that is a little bit too big, and I'm sure he's going to grow into them at some point. So these have got a garter stitch bit down the front of the foot, and they are a free pattern. I will have another go at these as well, because he does need to have more knitted socks. I just haven't got round to knitting him socks, I think partly because he grows out of things so quickly with his feet growing quite fast. But the Rhyolite I'll definitely have a go at again. They just come up a bit big. It might be because the yarn that I'm using is my BFL, and it is quite a thick fingering weight yarn. It's almost a sport weight, so that might be making it a little bit too big on the big side. But there we go, and I've knitted that with the scraps that were left over from the Wonder jumper, this one, so his socks and his jumper can match. And that was the Safety Dance colourway. So there was one thing on the list that we didn't get round to, and that was the Moose by Susan B. Anderson. And I did mean to cast this on in December because I thought it's a little bit of a Christmassy moose, but did not get round to it, so maybe that'll go on the list on another year, but we shall see. But I think that's pretty good. 8 out of the 9 of the baby makes all done. So I also had a list of a few things crochet that I wanted to get around to last year, but I absolutely totally didn't. I did actually do a couple of the Amigarami things from Toft, but I didn't get round to the things that were actually on my list. So first of all, it was the Weekender blanket by Sandra Paul, and I was going to use these lovely yarns from Giddy Yarns. So some of these are from last year's Advent, and then I did buy a mini skein set later last year that I thought would go well with it from Helen as well, so I was going to do it with those, but I didn't get round to it. So the Weekender blanket is basically little crocheted hexagons which form a sort of patchwork of different colours if you want them to be, and I thought that would be really nice to put all the beautiful pops of colour from Helen's Advent, but I just didn't get around to starting it. I did get all the yarn in a bowl all ready to go, but then I've got to go through it and cake everything up, which obviously takes a few hours in itself. I've got to make the time this year. That is something I really want to get round to, so I'm still going to get round to that at some point. The next things on my list were Suzette Double Hanging Basket by Guti or Agathe Rotman. And I really want to do that as well. It's a little hanging basket that I thought I could pop little bits and bobs in my craft room. And there was also another hanging basket called the Fleur Hanging Basket by Mel Harrison that I wanted to get round to as well. And I did actually buy the yarn, so goodness knows how I managed not to get round to it. But those will still be on my make sort of whatever, how many for next year on my crochet list. But like I said, I will make a proper list next week once I've really thought about what I'm doing over this next week. I really need to think about what I'm going to do in the future. So my big long list, I never thought that I was going to get them all done, but it's just keeping in my mind the things that I want to have a go at soon, so that I can, when I finish a project, I can go back to that list, check what's on the list and think, oh, what do I fancy doing next, and then pick something from it, rather than thinking, oh gosh, what do I start now? And sometimes I can get a bit overwhelmed if I don't have a targets list. So by no means do I mean to do everything on the list necessarily, but just so that I've got a path to go on, rather than going astray, being attracted by things that I perhaps wouldn't actually wear very much when I actually made them. So that's what I'm trying to do, and I'm going to try and do the same this year. I perhaps won't have so many things on the list, but we shall see. I do have garments on my mind though, so I'm hoping there's going to be lots more garments this year. So I do have, obviously you've heard my excitement about the Wanderer jumper and things like that, so some of those may be on there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to trawl through patterns on Ravelry and just make sure that there isn't something else I want to do more than what I've got on my list already, and then I'll switch it around. What I like to do then is put a queue on Ravelry, and then I can just go to my queue on my phone when I'm ready to cast on something new and have a look at that queue, and it just makes it nice and easy, and something that I can go to when I'm thinking I'm looking for inspiration on perhaps a pattern I've completely forgotten about. So my confessions are that I had a 12 days of Christmas advent calendar from Blue Fern Yarns, who actually organised a collaboration that I was involved in. Let me get the little piece of paper out and I can read out all the dyers that were involved in it. So this was called the Joy Advent Calendar. It was a 12 days of Christmas, and it was Shannon from Blue Fern Yarns, me, We had Jem from Under the Olive Tree. We had Laura from The Lonely Knitter. We had Jen from Castleview Yarns, and then Camilla from Lunar Lane Yarns. So it was really nice to be involved in this. I didn't actually show it over Vlogmas because I forgot to take the actual pack to my parents' house to start on Christmas Day. And I didn't want to open it earlier in case it spoiled it for anybody else, because the 12 days of Christmas, a lot of people sometimes use it for Christmas Day and the 12 days after that. So now that has passed, I will quickly show you what yarns were in it. I'll pick the two that are from each of the dyers. So these two are from Jen at Castleview Yarns, and they are gorgeous. I do love Jen's style of dyeing. We've got Laura, The Lonely Knitter's 2 colours. And there's a little logo. Those are really pretty as well. In fact, they all are, to be honest. What have we got? We've got Shannon's, and she likes a turquoisey blue as well as me. I ended up dyeing the sort of pink range of colours. But these are Shannon's from Blue Year Fern Yarns. These two are from Under the Olive Tree. Aren't they pretty? Really pretty. And when one of these yarns as well came with a little stitch marker from Under the Olive Tree. And then we had these two from really bright fiery colours from Lunar Lane Yarns. I did stick the stickers on them of what number they were, but then I've got them completely muddled up, so the ones that weren't labelled. And last of all, these are the two that I dyed, and I named mine Joyride and Hallelujah because the theme was joy, and I thought joy related songs, and the Joyride and Hallelujah I thought fitted the bill nicely. So there we go, that is the advent all together. And I got a little birthday present off my friend Liz, and this yarn is called Hydrangea Danger. And it's by You and Ply, and this is a shop that's in Shrewsbury, which I'm originally from, and Liz still lives there. Blues and pinks. I'm not quite sure whether this is like a self-striping. It looks like it's been reskeined, so it's difficult to tell what it's going to come out like, so that'll be interesting. Because it's a BFL base, I'll probably make socks with it, so it'll be interesting to see how it knits up. The third thing I've got to show you for my confessions is some pens. Now, I've bought these friction pens. They're different types to the ones I normally go for. So I normally go for the ballpoint ones, but these are actually more like a felt tip, these two here. So it'll be interesting to see what they're like. I bought them because I quite often use these for marking on fabric, and they disappear with heat, so you can iron it and it disappears. Although, depending on the fabric type, it can leave residue or a stain afterwards, so it's good to test it before you start. But quite often, if I'm marking a fabric, it's either somewhere that's not going to show, like inside a seam, or if I'm going to do free motion embroidery over it, it's going to cover the mark up anyway, so I can still get rid of most of it. So even if there is a tiny bit of stain left, it doesn't matter too much. And I also got a highlighter one, mainly because I could probably use that in my notepad, to be honest. But I picked up those three because they are slightly sewing related. I thought I'd show them on the podcast. I did actually try them out on a little scrap of fabric, and they seem to work very similar to the other ballpoint ones that I've got. So this one is like a wide highlighter, which works the same as a normal highlighter, and I thought that's interesting that you can erase them. So another addition to my pen collection. So my next section is what's occurring. So we have Barbara's Day Out in March, on March the 17th at Dunstan Hall in the Terrace Bar at 2 PM again. So date for your diaries. I have a whole host of prizes to give away, so I'm going to go through them really quickly. We have the subscriber giveaway for November, December and January. I thought I'd draw today. Basically, if you go over to my website and you subscribe to my newsletter, you will get a chance to win with a prize draw every month. So I do a prize draw every month. It's just that November and December were really busy and I didn't get a chance to draw the prize for then, so I'm doing it now. These 3 people are the winners of November, December and January, and I will be obviously drawing another one every month for the rest of the year. So if you are subscribed, you could be in with a chance of winning each month. So the first November is Michelle from Australia, December is Marsha from Illinois in the USA, and January is Kelly Williams, and she's from the UK, from St Leonards-on-Sea. So for the Craft 20 a day make along, I've drawn prizes for the end of last year. I've now closed the thread for Craft 20 a day, and I've got a new make along that I'm going to talk about in a minute. But the winners for Craft 20 a day from Ravelry, and I drew them from Instagram as well, but both of these winners were from Ravelry in the end. It was Sandy from Canada, and she was knitting a stripy pair of socks, and the second winner was Jo from Leeds in the UK, and she was doing a beautifully hand-pieced English paper piecing quilt, which I'll pop pictures of on the screen so you can see. For the Christmas craft along, it's finished in December, which I've only just got a chance to shut, is the winners are Majesty 1, which I don't know your first name I'm afraid, but from England. You made a pair of pyjama bottoms for one of your grandchildren. And then Christine from Indiana in the USA made a little mouse. So thank you so much for joining in. If I have called your name, I'll have either tagged you in on Ravelry, or for the subscriber giveaways I'll have emailed you. So all I want is your full name and postal address so I can send your prizes out to you. I will leave them as a surprise though, so you don't know what they are. But thank you so much for subscribing to my newsletter or joining in the make-alongs. But I have a make-along that I'm going to talk about in a minute. So we are now onto my shop update section. So this Sunday will be the last day where you'll be able to purchase or pre-order any of the yarn clubs for January. So I'm doing the Pop Stars mini set, which is inspired by a pop star, and it could be songs or anything that's to do with the actual pop star that the yarns are inspired by. So those are 10 or 20 gram mini sets on a variety of bases. The actual theme and the colourways will be a mystery, although what I'm going to do this year is that I'm going to try and make all of the mini sets throughout the year go together for a blanket. So if you did want to knit my new blanket pattern, which is coming out at the end of this month, which is basically, it's the same pattern pieces as my shawl, which is called the nest box shawl, but I've also done it so that you can do it as a star in the middle, which I shall show you in a minute. But they're the same pattern pieces as this, and it will just mean that the 12 months, because there's 12 stars on the Pop Stars version of the blanket, that if you have the yarn club every month, you'll have enough different colours to do 1 star each month, 6 different minis for each star, so there's 12 stars in total. So if you purchase those, all of the yarn clubs, you'll have enough to do the stars, and then you can do an undyed yarn or whatever background colour that you want to. So this is one of the blocks from the new Pop Stars blanket, and it's basically the same construction as the nest box shawl, which I've shown previously, but this is the star layout, so I'm going to call it the Pop Stars blanket, but there'll also be the nest box version as well. So if you look at it carefully, you can see that there is like a nest box here. So they'll be aligned like that on the actual blanket pattern. So there's a nest box version and the Pop Stars version, which will have these stars on, and in the pattern there are actually 12 star panels like this, so I thought it would go well with doing the yarn clubs each month. So in the Pop Stars yarn clubs there'll be 6 different colours which you can knit into these diamonds. For the DK version you need 15 grams for each of the diamonds, so a 20 gram mini set would be perfect. If you're using fingering weight yarn you only need 10 grams, so you could probably get away with having a 10 gram mini set for the Pop Stars each month to do a fingering weight version. For the outside diamonds you obviously need 15 grams again, so you need 90 grams of undyed yarn if you're doing DK, or if you're using fingering weight yarn you'll need 60 grams of fingering weight undyed yarn for the outside of the star shapes. If you're doing the nest box version with the 3 colours, what I'll be doing actually is making sure that there'll be 3 darker colours and 3 lighter colours, so that you can use it for the nest box version of the blanket as well. So the actual blanket pattern will be out at the end of this month, and you'll have full layouts for the blankets to do the star version and also the nest box blanket, and I'll give you sort of finished measurements. I think it's 90 by 70 for this version, and there's a similar measurements for the actual nest box version as well. So there's lots of different options, and I'd like you to come and knit with me. So I'm going to be knitting the yarn clubs as they come out into one of these blocks each month, so that I can knit along with you. And hopefully we'll all have finished blankets at the end of the year. In the pattern there will be some partial diamonds as well. So for some of the actual pieces you'll need to do half ones. So when you receive the pattern you'll see which ones to do that for in the layout, and you'll be able to colour in your diagram if you want to do them in your own yarns that you've got in your stash. But you can knit along with the knit along even if you haven't purchased the yarn from my shop, as long as you're doing the same pattern. That's absolutely fine, and I'd like to see all your different versions. Feel free to develop your own sort of placement of colours. It's just interesting to see what you'll do with the same diamond design. So come and join me in the knit along. So you'll need to use the hashtag Popstars Knitted Blanket 2024, or come over to the Ravelry group and come and chat about what colours you'll be using, and what sort of adjustments you're going to be making to the pattern to make it suit you. So the sock set or shawl set yarn club this year is the music from the movies, but the fantasy edition. So it'll be all my favourite fantasy movies, mostly from my childhood, to be honest. So if you're a similar age to me, you might be interested in some of these films and the songs that were from these films. But you can either choose like a sock set, a single skein of yarn, or like a shawl set, in that you've got 200-gram skeins in the 2 colours that I've designed for each of these clubs. So there are a variety of different sizes and yarn bases you can have, including a standard sort of merino nylon, a sparkly stellina, a BFL, a 4-ply alpaca, which is nice, which is more luxury, as well as like an MCM base. So you've got quite a variety of bases to choose from as well. I do have sort of the smallest size is the 70-gram sock set with a 50-gram with a 20-gram mini. So I've also listed these clubs as multiples as well, so you can buy 1 month, 2 months or 3 months. But if you purchase the 3 month, for example, you won't get the 3 clubs until the end of the last month that you've purchased, because I'll need to dye them up and post them out. They'll all go in one shipment. I also have a colour of the month this year. This month is New Sensation, this colourway, and that will only be in the shop for pre-order until Monday, and then that'll be taken off the website, and it's exclusively just for this month. So this is dyed on a merino nylon base, but you can choose obviously all the different ones that I spoke about a minute ago. But that's for this month's colourway. There will be a new colourway for February and all the other months in the year. But they'll be specifically just for the month, and then that'll be discontinued then. So I think that's all for today. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye!